What's going on, everybody? You found Bottom Tier Collector, and I'm the sad one, giving you sad stories from Sad Collector. I say that while I'm smiling, but I'm smiling because I'm so excited to give you Superman 75. But it is a somber story, a very iconic story, a story that was so iconic and so the impact was so big, so deep, that it got media attention back in 1993, excuse me, back in 1993, and investors bought tons of these issues, collectors bought tons of these issues. This was supposed to be the book that paid people's way into college. Right around this time should be the time this book is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, and it just wasn't meant to be. Even if Superman 75 had a 20,000 copy print run, which would have been mega low for 1995, I still don't think it would have been that expensive. I still don't think Superman 75 would be hundreds of thousands of dollars today, even with the mega inflation going on. That's just the nature of the beast. But it's always fun to look back and talk about Superman 75 and the impact it had on society. Such a huge, iconic comic book. Dare I say, one of the most iconic comic books of all time. Definitely, I think, the most iconic comic book for DC Comics. Maybe not the best comic story, maybe not the most important story for DC Comics, but it is definitely, I think, the most iconic single issue, at least, DC's ever written. And it's, the guy DC likes to show as the first superhero. Now, X11 Bravo, before you jump down my throat in the comment section, we have had that conversation before, and yes, I know the Spirit is before him and the Shadow is before him. I understand. So Superman's not the first superhero. I think I said that in a video before, and you quickly corrected me on that. So I want to make sure, X11 Bravo, I'm thinking of you. This is a story that inspired two members of the community. I think Super Russ 9000. This was the story that I believe got him into the hobby or got him back into the hobby. I know Russ is considerably older than me and would have been old enough to go to comic book stores and purchase comics in 1993, where I was 3 years old or 4 years old at the time of this comic book being released. So I couldn't have purchased this in 93, but I know for a fact this had a big impact on Super Russ 9000. I know for a fact this had a huge impact on FanBoyPrime. And then I'm sure my pretty much brother-in-law had a big impact on him, and maybe a big reason why he's such a big Superman fan. That's just incredible. The guy DC likes to take credit for as being the first superhero, which he wasn't. Again, got to put that out there. He died, and that's incredible because he's considered the superhero. And the storytelling isn't very deep; it's very cut and dry. I wanted to provide a prelude, if you will, some build up into Superman 75. I couldn't find the single issues on YouTube. I'm currently not subbed to DC Infinite right now, and then I'm just buying comic books down for the moment. So don't feel sorry for me. I'm not like struggling or anything, but that's just the nature of what's going on in my life right now. So I haven't read anything prior to Superman 75. I wish I had. I'd love to purchase the Death of Superman omnibus one day. But essentially, Doomsday is here. He's a force of nature. He's unstoppable, and nobody can stop him. The Justice League has tried to stop Doomsday, and Superman finally arrives on the scene, and we get the name of Doomsday from Booster Gold. He says, Superman, it's like Doomsday is here. And Superman's essentially like, we'll go with that. That'll be his name, Doomsday. And we get a scene where the military is in these like special laser suits, and they're trying to stop Doomsday, and it's really doing nothing. Superman's trying everything. We got tons of art in this book. Every page just feels like a huge haymaker punch, over and over and over again. And one thing I thought was really interesting about the book is that every page in this book is a splash page. So it just makes the art feel grand. It helps make the story feel like a really important, significant event. It's not broken up into tiny panels. Every single page in this book is a really good, colorful, great art page, very indicative of the 90s. Brett Breeding did a great job with this book, and I love the cover. Dan Jergens didn't have to do much with every page being a splash page. There's not a lot of script here. The story doesn't have a lot of character building moments, although there are moments where we see the media is in trouble. Some of the helicopters being used by the media to film and document this fight of the century are damaged. Lois Lane gets in the path of some of the damage. Jimmy Olsen as well. And there's a moment where Jimmy Olsen's like, I'm getting the pictures of the century, but we're losing half the city. And that kind of helps to drive the brevity of the fight. I really like seeing that scene. And then before we come to the final showdown in front of the Daily Planet, Superman pauses for a second to take his one true love, Lois Lane, out of harm's way. And they share a sweet romantic kiss with Lois Lane begging him to come back. And then Superman turns around to go win the heavyweight title of the universe and take down Doomsday. But it would not be so. They're fighting in front of the Daily Planet, and they're punching each other so hard that the glass is breaking off of the Daily Planet. And right near the end, both Doomsday and Superman give each other this one final blow that kills them both. They both die from the impact of these punches. And it's seen all around the world. We see this panel of the Kents, Mom and Pa Kent, holding each other and crying in front of their TV. And we're seeing other people around the world witnessing this event. And then we're taken to the final page, which is this gatefold cover, which connects to the final page, actual comic book newsprint page of the comic book, into Clark Kent lying in Lois Lane's arms, dead and bleeding, and a very, very beautiful panel. I'll have to put the picture up here somewhere so you guys can see it if you've never read this book before. My thoughts and opinions on this book. It's a very fast read. It's very cut and dry. I can't say it was the greatest issue of all time. I feel like it should have been. The superhero died. This is very critical to his legacy and his history. And I feel like I've read other stories that had the same sort of impact on these stories' main characters that I enjoyed a lot better. Particularly Emerald Twilight. I read that about 2 years ago, 2 years ago. And I think I enjoyed Emerald Twilight a little more than Death of Superman. And it's an easy to justify that. It's almost kind of not even a fair comparison. Emerald Twilight, Ron Mars does a great job of immediately crushing your heart with the destruction of Coast City and showing Hal Jordan breaking mentally by abusing his ring's power and going through his mind and trying to use the ring to work out the demons in his closet. And we see Hal Jordan had this mental break, and because he's not in his right mind, he's in this frantic emotional state, he turns on his best friends, the people that have been there for him through thick and thin. He breaks the rules and murders a character in Emerald Twilight. He comes for the Guardians. He's hell-bent on destroying everything the Green Lanterns stand for. Just so much emotional content. So much character building in Emerald Twilight. Whereas in Superman, just Doomsday, I realized Funeral for a Friend and Reign of Superman come after this. And that's the fallout. That's the real story. That's what makes Death of Superman so good. Not Superman 75, but the fallout of it. To see how Superman's death impacts the rest of the DC universe, the rest of the world. And so that's why it's not a true, fair comparison to compare the Doomsday arc of the Death of Superman to Emerald Twilight. But I still got to say, I enjoyed the 90s turn that happened to Hal Jordan more than the 90s. I don't want to say turn because he didn't turn. This isn't wrestling. He didn't heel turn. He died. Just the 90s gimmick that happened to Superman. Just very cut and dry. The heavyweight fight of the century. It did feel big, but it didn't have enough there emotionally with the character moments for me to be moved emotionally, if that makes sense. Now, I will in the future try to read Death of Superman in its full, and I would recommend everybody do that. Read Death of Superman in its full glory. Doomsday, Funeral for a Friend, and The Reign of the Superman. I think if you get the complete story, it's much more enjoyable, and this makes much more sense. But overall, I thought it was a fantastic comic book. Took me back to the 90s. Was it my favorite Superman story? I don't think so. My favorite Superman story is DC 1 Million. I love the plot twist in DC 1 Million. I don't want to give away the plot twist. Just when Superman realizes how they're going to defeat Solaris, which is the plot twist, the big, slap in your face, like, oh my God. It was like so jaw-dropping for me to read that moment. And then to see Superman 1 million come out of the sun after tens of thousands of years in the sun, and include the DC universe in his wedding to Lois Lane 1 million. I think she's also made of pure gold energy at this point. A very sweet, enjoyable moment to 1 million. And I really enjoyed 1 million. It flies under a lot of people's radar, but since we're talking Superman, I'm going to go ahead and recommend 1 million to you. Get the omnibus if you can. Read it digitally if you can't read the omnibus. But back to Superman 75. Still a great story. And I definitely can see why everybody enjoys it so much. And that'll do me, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. It was kind of hard for me to string out coherent, fleshed out, complete thought, because this is the end of an arc, and I didn't really get to cover the beginning and the middle of this story. But overall, I still loved it, and I hope you loved the review. And I hope if you haven't read Superman 75, you'll read Superman 75, but you'll also read, again, I said this earlier, the full story in its entirety. Thank you, as always, for liking, subscribing, commenting, and until next time, guys.